It, I haven't heard back from anybody, so it's not like I'm going to propose that or anything, so. Oh, it was just sent to David and I. Hey, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to start our Education Committee meeting. I'm glad you guys are here. When I am a speech coach, and our season has started now, so Mondays are always a busy day after school at Denfeld with my team, and I try to get as much help from my assistants as we can. So my clock didn't say it was 4:20, but I think it's probably 4:19. It's on my computer. But let's get started. We always start with Jeff's Assistant Superintendent's report. So I'm glad you're here. We've got a full agenda. We've got some great presentations. Again, if there is anything my board needs as far as housekeeping, like are we leaving for something? Are we needing to keep our cell phones on or close because of some pending things, just let us know, and then we don't have to worry that someone's going to misinterpret our leaving or something at that time. Just to check in. Anybody?
Thank you, Jill. I had a death in the family, and so I might be checking to confirm some things.
Well, we're supporting you and thinking of you, so thanks for sharing. So, Assistant Superintendent.
All right, I'm really excited for today's meeting. We have all sorts of fun things planned for you tonight, so hang on to your hats. Here we go. We're going to kick it off right now. We always start with some site celebrations, and Brad Vietz took us around on a tour about a month and a half ago now, I believe, and we saw just some amazing CTE programming around the district. And one of the programs that we saw was Mr. Donald Simon's engineering class. He's an engineering and industrial arts instructor over at Denfeld High School. And we've asked him to come today to show some of the amazing things that they're doing in their engineering class. What they're doing is they're building their engineering local models. And so they go on Google, they take local area things like the lift bridge, and they do some amazing work with that. And so I'm going to have him speak to it. He is much more of an expert on this than I am, so he is here today to share some of the amazing things that our students are doing. When we talk about career and college readiness, so a lot of people jump right to college, but there's amazing things happening in how we're getting students ready for careers right out of high school.
Thank you very much. As you said, my name is Donald Simons. I'm at East and Denfeld, and I've brought some parts just to kind of talk to you a little bit about our engineering and where we're going with this. In the CAD, we're using SolidWorks, and SolidWorks, I always tell the kids, the program loves them. They get to look at things and make things, and I love making things. So we wanted to start out with the aerial lift bridge. So this was the first design we had. I asked a student, I was like, I don't realize that the lift bridge is made out of tubing. It looks like it's angle iron. Well, we had a lot of fails with it. In the process, we're coming up here where we have our sides. I'll turn it a little bit so you guys can kind of look at it. And we're being able to print the aerial lift bridge. So what we're going to do is we're going to do Duluth. We have the deck. We have a big tugboat. Okay, so we're getting things. We have some of the Vista fleet. These are all things that, the students are seeing these every day in our community. Now they get to actually draw it, model it, and make some really fun things. They get to fail too, because engineering, not everything works. Some of the students said they were second year, and I'm like, well, how good are you? I said, I'm a master machinist by trade. How good are you? I can do anything. Make a bearing. And they made a bearing. Now this is printed all in one time. And this is with the tools that we give them. If you go down on the lake walk, you see anchors. Okay, so everybody is designing something in it. Now, of course, I mean, I have to tell you, I always could use more money for filament because my kids are going to print a lot. So we'll just put that out there. But if you look at the ore boats and things that they do, now they have to test it out first. They have to try it and do it. What the superintendent is looking at is, I told the student, put a block in a block. And they're like, what? I said, put a block inside the block with a 1-inch hole. And that's what the student came up with. So they're able to use all of their skills with the great programs that we have and build fun things. And they're really getting excited about it. So as the aerial lift bridge is coming together, oh, the other side is gone. We had another fail. Our printers aren't big enough to do the whole span of the lift bridge. So we can section it and we can do half and half. So hopefully it'll stay together. Come on. No, maybe not. That's what happens. So this is where we're going. So first year, there wasn't really a great structure. And when Brad and I met, we talked about, first years or intros, we want our students to get through at least chapter 6. The end outcome is our second year students, we want them to finish the book. I have approximately 15 students between Denfeld and East that are going to, in their first year, are going to complete this book. They're going to take the SolidWorks certification test. It's a 3-hour test. It's a great test. They're going to actually learn more about SolidWorks in a semester than they will at LSC. Now, some of my co-workers at LSC are a little jealous about it, but that's great because our students are getting a good direction, they're learning fun things, and they're going to be able to do something with this. So that's really what I have. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, things you want to know about. Maybe the light towers at the end of the canal. So we have our north and south light towers. And the kids do this.
So and all the kids took two-dimensional images and then also went and found the plans online of the actual physical dimensions and had to create the 3D models based on those. So it's not like you can go find a 3D model of the lift bridge. They had to use the actual designs and blueprints to create their own versions of it. And Don's right when you start looking through the progression, watching bridges where it looks great and then they turn it and all of a sudden they realize it doesn't connect. And watching them when they start simulating and going through the different procedures. So, but
in the design process, somebody comes up with a great idea, but how do we take it from that great idea and make it into a working thing? Or in the end, they ask me, how much detail should I put into it? How much detail would you want if you were to buy it? Because in the end, someone has to buy it. I said, or you can't make it. And they keep going, and I got to be honest with you, I'm so impressed with them. They're really doing a great job,
What's your course called?
Principles of Engineering,
CAD
for Engineering. We have a contract where students can, if they've gone through the first parts, I'll work with them and we'll come up with it's going to be a more intense design or something. And just keep encouraging them. Again, finishing SolidWorks and then being able to do that test at the end is really the goal that we want to see. A couple have done it in the past, but now we want to make it where it becomes more standard, where this is where you have to be. Because if you want to go into that contractual thing with me, you have to have that certification, just to make sure that they have to put in an effort too and do something.
And it's one where when I presented last month about college career readiness, this is part 2 where that industry credential, that CSWA, the SolidWorks, is one where a kid can go to college and get college credit because they have it, or go to work in an employer, sees that and says you've got a basic skill that's way more than what we normally hire. So it gives them multiple entry points based on what they want. So.
And then it's really getting exciting too, because now we're getting ready to start manufacturing. So, now we got all kinds of things we're going to start making. So get ready for your orders, because we'll be taking orders, because there's some really good things coming out of the Duluth Public Schools.
Any other questions for Mr. Simons?
Yeah, so I'm sorry if I missed it, but what grade levels can participate in this class?
9th through 12th.
Okay, so it's all 9 through 12.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And our goal is, we were talking If 9th, 10th, and 11th, they get through the basics, maybe on their 12th grade year, permitting with their GPA and where they're at, that they're able to go out and do more internships, and we get to do more things with the local businesses, because the local businesses need these students.
And it's one we're seeing that impact of. We have a student right now who is in first robotics at Denfeld, has taken our classes as well, and now is getting a paid internship. She was one of our Career Tech Ed internship students, where she's at a local employer, basically from noon to 5, getting paid and getting credit as well, using the skills she has. So she's working throughout their areas.
What kind of employers want this, and what will the students do once they get it?
So the sequence of the program, as you start going through, especially in this area, is the CAD and the principles of engineering really is that building, design, and prototyping. And then where industry comes in is you have those engineers and you have those designers at multiple manufacturers around the area. The other part comes in where Don comes from is the actual manufacturing. The machinists, the mills, the welders, those folks. And so that's where second semester, if kids have done all the solid works and worked through that, now the builders come in and look at those blueprints that were designed and now say, hey, I'm going to make it out of wood, make it out of metal, make it out of whatever. So we've kind of split the process of making things into two routes because the kids really tend to go one of the two. But we have a couple kids like Andrea Sass, who you met last year, who's soaking up every program we have from design to build. So she's just getting a broader scope of what all those processes are. So if she does go up into engineering or architecture, she knows what it means to also physically build it, which I think is a great thing for her. All right, anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's just amazing walking into your classroom and seeing the things that we're doing. Those both our male and female students engaging in that work and helping them getting ready for the workforce. That was great. So thank you for all that you do. Absolutely. All right. Next up on the agenda. We continue to do our walkthroughs through each of our sites. So as an administrative team, we go out to our sites and take a look at what's going on in our buildings. And our building principals have been working with their leadership teams to develop rubrics. And one rubric that we used was an MTSS rubric or Recongdon recently. The principal did a wonderful job. Kathy Cush-Marshall, she brought us in. We had a conversation about the things we were going to see, and then she took us on a tour of the school using this rubric so we could offer feedback to the staff and to the principal. And we saw great things. We saw high engagements. We saw flexible seating, different types of chairs for students who might need different seating to meet their sensory needs or their energy needs. But we saw best practices in literacy. We saw learning targets posted on the walls in the classrooms. We saw the student work on the walls. Some of the teachers are even using microphones. So in order to hear a consistent voice out the room, they had a microphone that they'd wear. And, one thing that I really liked, and I think the whole team felt really good about this, is we walked into a classroom and on the board said, what traditions does your family have in December? Didn't ask anything about Christmas, didn't ask anything about that, but it was something that all students could engage in. What traditions do I have in my family? How do we celebrate things in December? And we thought that was just really good. And that was, so I just really liked that piece to that. And just hats off to the group over at Congdon and really appreciated the hard work they did in working through that. You could tell that this was not something that was just done for our visit, but this was something that's being done on a daily basis over there. So really excited about that walkthrough. And that's something that we continue to do at all of our sites across the district. Just kind of a quick update on continuous improvement. We are continuing to work with the Regional Centers of Excellence on that, and they are helping support our Denfeld High School and our Learning Center through that process. We will have to turn in plans to the state on March 1st. That's when they're due. So we're continuing to work on that process, and they're continuing to update me and work with the principals on that process as we work with our CITs to really have a great plan for next school year. So they're putting in a lot of work, and that's really good to see, and we're thankful for their effort and the work of our CITs. I will be starting monthly meetings with our principals to review all of our sites to look at their data around their school improvement plans and their CIT goals and how monitoring progress and looking at ways that we can support and collaborate around that to ensure all of our schools and all of our students are achieving at high levels. Last out is I always do a shout out, and I have three people here today. I'm very excited to introduce, and I'm going to bring them up here, and then I'm going to actually have the three of you come up if you would please, and I'll introduce you as you come up. The first one is Patience Thompson. She is a fourth grader over at Myers Wilkins, and I'll tell you, when I went to Through Our Eyes a couple Fridays ago at the Dr. Robert Paulus Culture Center. This young lady really stole the show, in my opinion. She was absolutely amazing. You could have passed for a sophomore in college. You're so articulate and just did a wonderful job. And if you look over at some of the paintings or the pictures over there, you actually will see her in one of them. She was involved in photography. She also starred, and she's going to speak a little bit more about that. With her today is Ivy Vinio, and she is at the Art and Climate and Culture Program Coordinator at the American Indian Community Housing Org. So ACO is how we say that. And then Katie Schmidt is here as well from the and she is the Children Programs Corner over at ACO, and she's going to kind of kick us off in talking about what's going on over the things they're doing, how that connects to our school, and why this is so important and extremely professionally done, might I add. I was just wowed when I walked in there. Top-notch job. So I'm excited that you are all here today to share more about the things that you're doing.
All right. Yeah, thanks for inviting us. So my name is Katie Schmitz. I'm the Children's Program Coordinator at ACO, and I get the pleasure of working with amazing kids and amazing families, including Patience and her family. And I'm just going to say a little bit about what kind of the goals of the children's program. Our main initiative is the Gamaji Healthy Families Initiative, and we work to strengthen culturally based healthy eating and access to indigenous food systems and culturally based physical activities. So we have gardens at Gamaji, so the kids are really involved in the gardens and learning how to grow food, and we grow a lot of traditional varieties, and then we have a gymnasium, so getting the kids in the gym a lot, but also getting them out in the community. We do a lot of field trips. We do a lot of culturally based physical activities based on the seasons. Like in the spring, we go to Maple, like a sugaring camp. This fall, we went to a wild rice camp, harvesting camp. We've done foraging hikes. We work with different members of the community that have that cultural knowledge that they can share with the kids. And the kids are really leaders in this community. They are the ones that get us out in the garden. They're the main helpers in the garden, helping us decide what to grow and helping us take care of the gardens. They love to get into the kitchen, and they're really good at getting their family members to try different things. Whenever we make anything in the kitchen, we go to and try to get people to try it, and they're great at doing that. And I wanted to say one other thing that, I have a background in education, and I think this is really one of our main objectives, I feel like, is you hear a lot about disparities in the achievement gap and barriers, and really a lot of what we try to do is to provide those are all really important things to know about, but to provide a counter narrative that's really positive, and this photography project is one of those examples. So I'm going to hand it over to Patience to talk a little more about that.
Bonjour, I am Badaban Nakwaizans, and I actually brought a calendar here so we could pass it around and everyone can take a look. I am also here to talk about the photography class that the Gamaji building offered for the youth, and I think everyone loved the opportunity to take lots of photos at different places. First, we took photos in the garden with plants we grow. Then we went to Lake Superior and we took lots, and I mean lots of photos. Thank you for inviting me. and have a good day.
And I just want to just state just a quick thing that this photography project was a really amazing experience for everybody involved. Gamaji, if you don't know, is a housing unit in downtown, and we have 29 units of permanent supportive housing for low income and homeless, mostly indigenous folks, families. And the work that Katie does and the work that all of our staff does around leadership, youth leadership, and community engagement and involvement and all that really is stellar. And this focus that this photography exhibit that featured Gamaji and Duluth Indigenous youth focused on indigenous foods, healthy indigenous foods, the sacredness of water, and also leadership within themselves. And so the exhibit is up until the end of this month. So if you wanted to stop by, anybody can. 10 to 5 during the week, Saturdays from 10 to 3. And it's in our Dr. Robert Paulus Cultural Center. And the calendars are available for sale at the gift shop at ACO for $15. Thank you, patience. And it's also available, so if the school, any of the schools wanted to host the exhibit, they could for a certain amount of time. I think it's very important for Indigenous youth to see themselves in schools through teachers, through administrators, through each other. And so if you're interested in that, please get in contact with me or Katie, and we'd be happy to set that up for you all. So thank you. Thank you, Patience, for being so brave.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Would one of you be willing to share a little bit about each of the pictures up there before we end your piece?
What did you say?
Would you be willing to share a little bit about each of the pictures? I see we have strawberries and blueberries, and we have one with you patients in it. You know, are these Duluth students? Are these some of your friends? And tell us a little bit about the pictures.
Yeah, actually, Elias, the second picture, that is my cousin, and the other two are just friends. And me and Elias, we took pictures to represent the water and what the water can do for people. And after we all took pictures representing the water, we did get to go swimming, which was fun. And the other two are representing spiritual food, I think. And it was just super fun in the garden. In our garden. With all the fruits and plants and flowers we grow.
Absolutely wonderful. And I just can't get over how amazing those pictures look like. And Patience, you did such a wonderful job. When I first came in, you greeted me, said hello, you gave me a tour around all the photos, and just an amazing job. So thank you again for taking some time to be here today and share that with us. And thank you both to you as well, Katie, Ivy. Really appreciate you being here and sharing this with us. And just a great connection between how we're working together as a community and a school to support our kids. So thank you for all that you do.
You are welcome.
That concludes my report for this month.
Thank you, Assistant Horton, really bringing the level of our committees up with our guests. But thank you, too, for all of this. It's great to see all the things that we have going on. High fives. And so we're going to move on, even though we would love to dwell a little bit more on all of the shout-outs that we've just heard. But and I love the through our eyes. I love that phrase. It just captures all that. So I hope to visit. We hope to come. So we're to our Director of Curriculum, Gail Netland's report.
Thank you. So with my report this month, 3 major topics: staff development, specifically focused on early childhood partnership with the district. So MDE is offering some training for us regionally, which is really nice. We don't have to go far, just down the block.
Okay.
And we've got a team getting together to talk about alignment and improving how our different components in our system work together. So basically making sure we're on the same page and making sure we're moving towards the same work to help our youngest kids learn and get their needs met. So we went to a training, a group of 5 of us went to a training last week. It's a long month already. And so that was really good. We've got 2 more pieces of that coming up later this year. Another staff development opportunity that happened, I had the opportunity to attend, was there was a regional standards review draft for science. So we had talked about way back in, I think, August, about the science standards being up for review at the state level this year. And so we've got several teachers that were involved in that in the regional meeting. It was held at Piedmont and provided opportunities to ask questions, to provide feedback. There was a survey available on the website for MDE, and I put a link to that just so you could see. And then there'll be at least 2 more drafts with that coming out, but just know that we had teachers involved in providing feedback on that. So that was really neat to see. Moving along, next topic, course catalog and registration. This one has come up several times this year as well. So you have a link to the current draft of the course catalog. All of the major pieces of it are there. There's doing some last minute editing and spell checking and making sure things are lined up type thing going on. But so that is due to be released in January, rolled out 2 buildings. So there's a link for you to take a look at. And I just wanted to briefly talk about some of the new features we added this year to try to make it a little bit more user-friendly. So one of the things we did was we combined the course catalog and what was called the supplement, or additional information to it, into one document, regardless of what age level you're at. So if you're a middle school student, you're getting 1 catalog. You don't have to worry about 2 books. Same thing if you're a 9th grader or an upperclassman, you've got 1 book to worry about. Also, we had heard feedback that it was hard to locate this item and it was hard to know where to go for what information. So that was one of the reasons for that. Additionally, we worked to develop a course key to try to clue in both teachers, parents, students in how to read this and get information quickly about courses. So like the example course that you saw kind of demonstrated for you earlier tonight, that course is in there and there's information about it, how it's offered for every course, whether it's offered online, whether it's repeatable, if you can take it more than once and keep learning, whether college credit is an opportunity with it. So trying to help people navigate and be aware of opportunities that exist in our system, because there's a lot of them. It can be overwhelming. And along with that, the online courses are intentionally included in this registration guide, along with the seat-based ones that we normally include, and it's been offered in 2 formats. They're designated in the main part of the course catalog with a little symbol that looks like a computer for offered online, and additionally in the back there is a list of just classes offered online. If you're just looking for that, you can find them that way as well. So it's offered in multiple ways. Also, I didn't put it on my notes here, but Career and Tech Ed is also offered that way as a standalone, so people can find them or they're identified in the catalog. Lots of work with that. On that note, last month, I provided some information on course changes that had happened and had different stakeholder groups reviewing the catalog and providing input. And since then, we had a couple of changes, so I just wanted to make sure you were aware of those. They're not new courses. It's something simple like changing the department or changing the title. So I just wanted to give you a chance to take a look at those so you're on the same page. And I'll pass those around. And so as you're waiting for this, the changes that came out, I was actually really excited about this. One of the changes came in the area of music, and this came as a result of the curriculum group is doing some review of standards, looking at alignment with the new standards work being done. And they are using the equity tool that the board approved in June. So they're learning more about that. And as a result of that, they were looking at their course titles and noticed that they weren't very inclusive. And so made the change from freshman band to ninth grade band, women's advanced choir to advanced soprano, 1, 2, and alto choir. So it was really neat to see that work happening, kind of the follow through of that action. So that was very exciting to me. And then on the back page, the other changes were simply moving some of our early childhood education courses into the same department as our Pathways to Teaching. We had an education department and an early education, and it just seemed unnecessarily complicated for kids, so we changed it just to education. So those were some of the changes that happened since last time. Any questions on that part before I move on?
I have a question about the change from like freshman band and choir to ninth grade band and choir. Yeah. By naming it ninth grade, are we limiting it to ninth grade, or would a better description be beginning band or advanced band and those sorts of things? Because, as somebody that has room in their schedule, and I know music instructors would love an 11th grader or a 12th grader to say, hey, I have something, maybe I can start. But then they sign up for ninth grade band as a junior?
Good question. So this one is intentionally targeting ninth grade students. That speaks to ninth grade students in the description, which is why I went with that. Same thing with the women's advanced choir, switch to the specific vocal ranges that are being targeted with the course.
It just seems to be more limiting than inclusive to me. That's all. I would like to hear some feedback from the music instructors that if they're limited in choice of being able to recruit because of the limitations of how it's spelled out in the course catalog. Yeah.
So the intent of the course is ninth grade students. So it was just a title change, if that makes sense.
It does, but I'm just saying that people later on after ninth grade, where's their opportunity to join band if they want to?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So along with that, there's a requirement in our district that students take band, choir, orchestra in middle school multiple years as well. I can look into that, but that would require a deeper revision than what's intended here. It's just to make it a more inclusive title. Other questions?
Is it appropriate to ask Principal Sconiers to say something? Because I know...
Speak up as
No, that's a great question.
Kids don't go backwards.
Into the band and choir directors had input into those. They had input into those course titles, and I sat down with, I can only speak for me sitting down with Paul Christensen, and he said that you have a ninth grade choir, but then the more advanced is then when they start to delineate as far as voice. And he really made a chuckle as far as the voices are they're not exactly the same, but they're more synonymous in the ninth grade, and they start to delineate more as the kids get older. And so there is an opportunity for them to continue on with, let's even say, choir or band at a more advanced level as they move forward. So I think that's what you were asking. You were saying there's a ninth grade one, and then there's advanced.
I'm asking if people can start band later than ninth grade, where would they start if there's only ninth grade band offered?
What we have been able to do is we have a pop, rock, and hip hop band. It's a new course that started this year, and they work on instrumental and composing and things like that, and that's where at least our band director ushers kids in who are brand new to band and may not be in the ninth grade.
Okay.
And it's going strong, and we may have 2 sections instead of 1 next year. Kids love it. Pop, rock, and hip hop.
You got it. Yep.
That's what it's called. Yeah. Good. I'll see y'all soon.
Thank you. But I see where your question is, Member Oswald, and I know that, and I know Principal Sconyers will assure me of this, but it's not for this year, but last year, I think just out of the goodness of his heart, he offered a new band member class during his lunch hour just to see if there were kids interested in instruments after 9th grade. And maybe what they determine as well, these teachers that know their students, is there's not that many. So they offered the opportunity for new members that had never played an instrument to come in and do a new, and maybe this year they decided there wasn't enough interest. I don't know.
I just would like to make sure that if a kid is interested, there's a pathway to get them to be able to play. That's all.
All right. Moving along, curriculum adoption updates. So had a couple of updates on this. We had talked about ELA text adoption, and I wanted to give an update kind of where we're at again. So for 9th grade, I'm pleased to let you know that we've got 3 finalist texts that people are in the process of reading. Did a lot of work narrowing down texts in a variety of ways and trying to get down to a manageable number of options to read, because we are in the middle of the school year and people have jobs and families and things to do besides this. So trying to figure out what's manageable, and we settled on 3. And the texts are there for you. I also linked them into Amazon just so you could kind of see what they were about. And then I brought copies to look at. I don't have budget to get everybody copies, I'm sorry. I've got copies provided for people who are part of the review process, both teachers and parents and students and community members, so they're here so you can take a look. And then wanted to let you know that we're in the middle of reading. So teachers are reading, parents are reading, students are reading, community reps are reading. And with that, the goal is to be done reading and providing input by the end of this month, so that we can then come back together, take a look at our input, where we're at on that, and sit down with the English teachers and get a final recommendation together for you in January. So that's kind of where we're at in the timeline.
I just have a question as an English teacher, and knowing our timeline, would there be an opportunity for our high school English teachers to not have a unit ready in the chosen text just because of their timeline? And from my experience teaching, we have more than enough curriculum to use to meet standards. I mean, we have an anthology, and oftentimes we don't have a lot of time to cover everything. So would there be an opportunity at all for a 9th grade English teacher to say, love the book, working on the units, can we start it next year?
No. And the reason for that is we're identifying a text that's going to be part of a required reads. We don't do very many required reads. There's a lot of latitude in our district for what kind of teachers can decide about which text to use or have opportunity for students to read. These are ones we're saying that everyone's going to read it. And because of that, we are taking funds and time to create a unit at the district level with teachers coming in with the ELA curriculum specialist. So we're going to be taking time to do that in January and February with the goal that the unit's ready to roll out in March, which is when the pacing calendar calls for it. So we have time. It's a good question. Yeah.
Just thank you to you and everyone working on that issue right now, that topic, I should say. Thanks.
Thank you for
Appreciate
the thank you. No,
I just have a question too.
Yeah.
I may have missed it, but how is it ultimately going to be chosen? I mean, is it by vote? Is it by consensus? Does the administration owning the final call? How is that?
Sure, and that was one of the questions teachers had too. And so what I did is I fleshed out roles and responsibilities. Ultimate responsibility is school board approving the text, since it's going to be a required read, which is why I'll be presenting that to you in January. The person recommending it would be my position, so you'll be hearing me do that. So I'd make the final call on the recommendation, with primary importance being the teacher input, because they're the ones that are going to be teaching it, right? And filtering that recommendation through the lens of the community, parent, student input. We want something that is workable for teachers and the kids that are going to be learning it, right? And families in our community. So that would be the goal.
I had a conversation with someone that's currently reading the books, and they were going to make their own rubric to evaluate the 3 books to be able to figure out what's best. Is that something that your department could offer or figure out so it's evaluated fairly?
Good question. We actually took time to develop rubrics.
Thank you.
So if people are reading the books, they should be using the available rubrics. Those were shared with the texts. Good question. Other questions or wondering?
I just also wanted to thank you for the work that's been done on this. For my quick look at this, which I'm now going to give this little list to my significant family members for a Christmas list, but I appreciated that they were all women authors, and one of them was a regional, a Minnesota author, so thanks for doing that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So thanks to both of our leaders for your reports. We're going to go on now to our Check and Connect, our informational presentations, and we're pleased to invite Check and Connect program update this month. So thank you. It's always nice. It's okay. Again, we welcome you to the table. We're glad you could make it to this month. We know we rescheduled you because I think this is one of the presentations that our community will be delighted to know about, and I think it's a program that not a lot of our community knows about, so I'm glad to be able to share this with them. And would you introduce yourselves again, just more for our audience that is on YouTube right now?
Thank you, members of the board, Chair Lofald. That's my cue to start, and my first slide is for us as an organization to kind of introduce ourselves. I'm Jason Crane, Special Ed Director for Duluth Schools.
Sarah Hallinan, Check and Connect Coordinator.
Tanya Sconiers, Principal of Denfeld.
And Tanya Lake, Director of Assessment and Evaluation.
Donnie, you're going to start up right away.
Yeah. So wanted to give you just an overview of what we'll be presenting tonight. There's been a lot of background as far as how this program and philosophy that we've been working on for the last 4 years, or will be 4 years at the end of this year, happened, what's been our journey, some of the key accomplishments that have occurred throughout the journey with Check and Connect, and also the goals, challenges that we've faced. We want to share with you some results. Data is important to know how things are going, and then also to follow up with you all on next steps and where we go from here. So, as we look at the background, the Office of Education, the Office of Special Education Programming, there was a charge to the states, and the charge was to develop a comprehensive and ambitious multi-year plan that was to be developed to improve results for children or students with disabilities and their families. We often have programs that solely focus on kids and not the supports and the relationships that we can nurture with families. So it was not only to support kids, but also to include families. Also, it was to increase the capacity of districts to implement, scale up, and sustain an evidence-based practice that would result in us improving results and reaching our goals. So what happened was they reached out at the state level, and there were 4 districts in our state, the state of Minnesota, that were identified. And the reason that the 4 districts were identified is because they account for approximately 30% of the population group that we are working with on this grant. So the 4 districts were Minneapolis, St. Paul, Osseo, and then Duluth Public Schools. Our goal is to increase the 6-year graduation rate specifically for Black and American Indian students with disabilities, so who receive special services. So that's the ultimate goal. Of course, we want to improve the 4-year rates, the 5-year rates, and then also the 6-year rates. Traditionally, when data is presented, it's usually just the 4-year graduation rate, but this work and this journey took into account that that graduation is sometimes not at, it doesn't happen at 4 years, but the ultimate goal is for students to graduate, and some may take longer than the 4 years to do that. So 4, 5, and 6-year graduation rates were the focus of this work that we've been doing.
So some other stats that aren't necessarily in the presentation, you might be wondering about the money. So we do get some benefit of MDE, State of Minnesota funds that come into this. The whole grant project was $800,000. So we're in year 4 of funding, and that's about $160,000 per year that pay for positions like Sarah's position. We were actually in competition with other districts as well, so this was a competitive opportunity, and we're one of 4 that were selected, and we're fortunate to be part of that process right now. And we get a lot of benefit for this, but it's complicated, and there's a lot of steps in the process. So the next slide kind of highlights, we've been in the midst of this for 5, if not 6 years, because we got introduced to it and went through this exploration phase for a period of time. And exploration is, we weren't necessarily working with the kids yet, but we were trying to determine what tool, what set of implementation criteria do we as a district, what meets our needs, to say the least. And that wasn't working with students yet. So that was way back in 2015. And after a comprehensive set of data analysis and some tools like the hexagon tool that took a look at what our district needs are, we started gravitating towards the Check and Connect program, and that was our ultimate selection. Tanya or anybody else, feel free to add additional details related to the tools or complexity of our history.
Part of the purpose of showing you those slides was just to show an overview of the timeline of our journey, but also the purpose was to show that it was a well laid out process that was guided by implementation science. So there's research out there that tells us if we implement things following certain steps, we're going to have better results and we're going to be able to sustain our results. So as Jason talked about, exploration, installation, initial implementation, and full implementation, those are the 4 stages. And within each stage, it's very important to do the foundational work. So that's why initially we weren't working with students. We were assessing our district's readiness, determining which schools would participate. Then we went into that installation stage. We were building capacity, which meant we were looking at what kind of infrastructure did we need to have in place and start to put some of those in place, like data systems, for example. Then initial implementation was really learning that strategy. After we selected Check and Connect, learning that strategy together. And finally, full implementation is when Check and Connect, the strategy that we selected, becomes standard practice.
Another important partner in this is the University of Minnesota that is in the process of developing this Check and Connect system and all the forms and data analysis that's used around this Check and Connect program. So, for example, the Check and Connect training is around $30,000. We get it for free right now because we're part of this program. And the goal is for us to develop capacity with people like Sarah that can be our trainers in district and use that for the future moving forward. We may have to recruit some if we move forward with this in the future and don't have the grant funds to pay for some people to go to training, but it's nice right now. It's free for our district, and we've had several people, a lot of people, go through the training. So lastly, several of the district measures that were on there, the district capacity assessment, you saw all district meetings on there several times throughout the years, and we plan on, and thank you for allowing us to come each year and give you updates on this. But it's an ongoing plan, do, study, act process that's always in place. And honestly, MDE comes up more than, if not at least once a month. They'll come as often as needed. They offered to come and help do this presentation with us.
So we have an amazing team in place. We have, as Jason said, we have the Minnesota Department of Education. They have provided so much valuable guidance through this process, especially helping us learn that implementation science. We've been able to use that information and those skills that we've learned over the course of the grant and apply them when we're implementing other things in our district. So that's been a bonus that wasn't necessarily monetary. We also have a district administrative team. So Jason, myself, our assistant superintendent are all a part of that district level support. Denfeld principal, Tanya Sconyers, and our Check and Connect coordinator, Sarah, and then we have 2 Check and Connect mentors. So when we're looking at the grant, it's funding a half-time Check and Connect coordinator and 2 Check and Connect mentors, and those positions are paraprofessional positions. So the next slide, just some of the key accomplishments that we've had. I'll get into more of the specific data a couple slides from here, but just some key accomplishments overall. We have improved our capacity to implement evidence-based practices. So just that, like I said, learning about how to implement things and implement them well has been a real benefit. We've also increased the number of students each year who have been seen by mentors. So currently 60 students are being served in the program by our 2 paraprofessional Check and Connect mentors. And then one of the highlights, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, but over the 2 years we've had 13 of our 14 students with disabilities who are also Black or American Indian graduate on time. The one student that happened to not graduate on time is continuing her education. So this has had very significant impact on Denfeld's graduation rates, but also our district rates. It's had some nice impact on the district rates as well. Let's see. The goal of the grant really wasn't to graduate students in 4 years, but we've been able to do that, so that's been exciting. We've had some challenges along the way. We've had some staff turnover, and also to implement things well, there is a lot of work that has to happen behind the scenes. So it's not just about seeing kids, it's about collecting data. There's fidelity checks that need to happen. Sarah is providing coaching to make sure that the strategy is implemented with fidelity. There's a lot of time involved with us meeting as a team once a month. So there are a lot of requirements to do this work well. Another challenge, funding and commitment to support the scale-up efforts. It's unclear at this time what the future of this program is. We're hoping that we can continue to sustain the work that we began and perhaps even grow the program. And then one of the challenges too is when students are chronically absent. They're not benefiting then from the program if they're not in school. The next slide is just looking at one of the things that we do is we assess our district capacity to implement this strategy well. And we started out in 2016, and you can just see by that small little graph where we were at that time. We had a total percentage when it looks at all of the factors that are needed to implement something well. We were at 13%. We had 13% of the things in place.
Lucky 13.
Yep. A year later, we over doubled that and we were up to 28%. We were feeling pretty good about that. And then the last time that we did this assessment was last February, and we were at 80%. So we still do have some work to do in terms of making sure that we have the infrastructure to continue to sustain this work. But we've made some very visible gains over time in our district's capacity. The next slide just really breaks that down into those 3 periods of time where we checked our data. You can see the various areas that are looked at. Leadership, which is really a lot about planning. Competencies, which is training and selecting staff. Organization, that's things like data support systems and having a systemic intervention. You can see that some of the things we didn't even have a score. at the time, at the first time that we looked at our data. We're now, in many of our areas, we're at 100% capacity. So we're pretty excited about the progress that we've made.
I just wanted to note that, as Tanya was saying, we have made great strides from where we began, and one of the areas, this gives us a clear picture as far as district capacity, that if you look on the chart, the one area that we put a goal to, there are a couple goals we have, but one of them is to improve systems intervention, and that clearly showed on our district capacity assessment. Thanks.
And one of the nice things about doing this periodically is it really helps guide our work. It helps guide our next action steps so that what we are putting into place makes sense. It's a real systemic way of doing things. The next slide is looking at just student data. We've had students for 2 years, and you can see that one of the things that we're tracking is their percent attendance overall. And we've seen a slight increase from the first year to the second year. Where we saw a greater increase was the percent of credits earned. That's something that we check too. So of all of the credits that they're attempting, what are they earning overall? And we've increased that number to, I don't have my glasses. 81%. Yeah, we've had some increases there. And then, really the end goal is making sure that students are graduating. This happens to be Denfeld's overall graduation rate, so it does include the students who are program participants, but it's not solely the students who are program participants. But what you can see there is we have 3 years of data there looking at the percent of students graduating, and back in 2014, the overall graduation rate 4-year for all students was at 73.42% at Denfeld, and the 16-17 school year it was 80.36. So we've seen a nice increase there over 3 years. Where it gets even more exciting is when we look at our American Indian students. So back in 2014-15, 30% of our students, or 3 out of 10 seniors, whereas now 73.33 is the 4-year graduation rate for our American Indian students, so 11 out of 15. Let's see, I'll just highlight maybe another one. Special education, so that's another population or another group that was impacted by these services, and they went from a graduation rate of 45% back in 14-15, and now we're looking at 61.82. So 34 out of 55 seniors who were in the cohort who were getting special education services graduated. Yes, and black students. Black students, we've stayed steady over time. We had 10 out of 18 students that graduated in the 16-17 school year.
Just I wanted to note that in the 14-15 school year, we did have 57% of black students graduate. Took a big dip in 15-16 down to 42%, and we're pleased to see 16-17 back up to 55 and growing.
The 17-18 results will be ready in February, so it will be interesting to see. We know that because we've been tracking the actual students, we know that the students made it across the stage, those that were a part of our program. So that's going to have a nice impact on those numbers when we get them back from the state in February. We're expecting to see some exciting results.
Anxiously awaiting. So the next slide it really talks about the student impact and actually from the student perspective. What are the kids saying as far as Check and Connect? And we asked students, and some of the things that they were talking about, we have the 2 Check and Connect mentors. One's name is Kim and one is Deb. And so they say Kim and Deb are nice. Another student said, being here makes me feel like I'm at home. If it wasn't for Deb, I probably wouldn't come to school. She motivates me. And also, if Deb wasn't here, I wouldn't graduate. We've had many students say the positives and the benefits of having Check and Connect in their lives, in their school life, and their personal lives, as far as connecting with their families, parents. We had a graduation, we had a a graduation celebration last year where parents came at the end of the year for those seniors who were graduating, and it was a joyous occasion. I do have to say, on a anecdotal, personal note, the person who does my hair, at least for the last 14 years, braids my hair, her name is Alicia Barnes, and she has said that I could share this. Her son is a part of this, and she said to me as I was getting my hair braided, probably 6 months ago, she said, Michael wouldn't be in school if it wasn't for Deb. That, her words, that woman is a miracle worker. And so those are some input and from parents and students as far as Check and Connect and the impact on their students' educational journey and personal. So the next steps, where do we go from here? We initially started off with 25 students per caseload, increased that to the current load of 30 students per caseload, and now we are increasing the mentor caseload to 35. We have more students in need. They now have, as we've been implementing and doing better with implementation science and putting together what are those steps, and they are more, it's more ingrained as far as how to oversee and to work with students. We are able to increase the caseload for more students to work with the Check and Connect mentors. Excuse me. We also, next steps are continuing to work to increase district capacity to support the initiative. It has been successful, and we see the success at Denfeld. So with that, we have on at least 2 occasions over the last 4 years spoken with other principals as far as what the results are, what the success is, and I believe on Wednesday, yes, we have a principals meeting where we are going to share the results of Check and Connect and see at this point, as schools are looking at those evidence-based initiatives and practices that have been successful, and then looking at moving into the budgeting season, are there resources and funds that they want to utilize to implement Check and Connect within different buildings, different schools in Duluth. Also, we are looking at expanding the use of Check and Connect at Denfeld. We have mentor volunteers within Denfeld's community school program that have been trained. We had a training in November, so we had some of our mentor volunteers go through that training, and they then are implementing Check and Connect with students within that are outside of the Check and Connect grant. And we also have volunteer teachers who are implementing Check and Connect during their WIN, and that's part of our multi-tiered system of support and interventions that we're providing. I mean, literally, we have teachers during the WINs and during their time to implement PLCs going to check in with students in their classrooms and talking to them about barriers and grades and attendance and all kinds of things that help them to succeed and do better in school. We are exploring ways to sustain programming at Denfeld past the grant. We are in as Jason was saying, we're in the 4th year of 5 years. And so we are looking at exploring ways to and how to sustain, and not only to sustain, but to grow. If it works, then we need to do it more. And we do see that it's working, and so we want to do it even more. And lastly, we want to provide information to other schools to encourage expansion beyond Denfeld, as I talked about, touching base and meeting with other principals, sharing what it is about, the results, and how, if they see this as a practice that will improve their student success, implementing it at other schools. That's it. Questions?
Member Oswald.
Thank you. The slide with the pictures definitely speaks to the value of the relationships with the staff that the students, feel very close to. And one of the challenges is to keep those staff in those positions. Knowing that there are para positions, is there an MOU in place to keep those staff in that, or is it a bumpable process? And is that going to be addressed in any way in the future when and if we expand it?
Very good. Well, given the contract, we will be following contract as far as para. So if that is feasible given the contract, I can say that the 2 persons, our Check and Connect mentors, are very senior. in the position, and very dedicated individuals. We did have a turnover. We started with 2, 1 retired last year, and we also had a turnover in our Check and Connect coordinator. And I do have to say, as far as one of the accomplishments, sometimes when you have turnover, and it can be a challenge, but also, if done right, we talk about a seamless transition. And really, we have had a wonderful transition where there might have been glitches and maybe taking a step back. We did not have that in ushering in our new Check and Connect mentor this year, nor did we have that in ushering in Sarah as our new coordinator, as Mike Meyer took on another role. So that's been a very positive thing, and I think a big accomplishment and a testament to us knowing how to continue and to sustain. Given the work that we've been doing with MDE, they have been masterful. I think Tanya said it, but they have been in teaching us how to sustain and really to implement an evidence-based practice, oversee it, look at the Plan, Do, Study, Act, and all of those stages that really help to embed something that's working within our school. So, of course, the contract prevails. We do have 2 senior mentors.
Okay. And then, you're increasing the caseload to 35 kids. Is there a tipping point where there's too many kids? Is there a ceiling on a caseload for a mentor?
Yeah.
All right. Over the years, we've had nearly 80 students at Denfeld, and we haven't worked with all 80. And we came to the realization that for kids that are getting A's, they probably don't need the support. They don't necessarily benefit from the program. And we also have some nonverbal students in some of our Setting 3 programs that are already fully supported. So we've worked in the middle, and we've determined that 35 is probably a realistic caseload, and also gotten the guidance from the Check and Connect people to say 35 is probably realistic, and that's where you should stop.
Okay. And so knowing that these are exclusively special ed kids that are being worked with right now, is there any need to add a person to try to get into non-labeled students that are struggling and helping them? But I know you had mentioned that WIN and volunteer teachers and that kind of stuff, but I'm talking to Fidelity, not once a week or whatever. An actual person, an actual mentor dedicated to helping other struggling kids in the general population. Is that in the plans as we ramp up, or?
So far, right now, we are ramping up, or we call it scaling up.
Yeah.
Our scaling up is really to look at the capacity within Denfeld. We have a number of general ed teachers who have been trained in Check and Connect, and we view it as an intervention. So when we look at our multi-tiered system of support, it is an intervention which can be implemented through our PLC work. Teachers meet within their PLCs, they assign interventions to students. Some of those interventions right now have been with general ed students who need Check and Connect support. The teachers, some of them have been trained, and they're providing that. It varies when students see the volume or the amount of time that students see a Check and Connect mentor. It may be once a day. It may be once a week. Even now with our sped ed students, it may be within their classrooms and them touching base with them. So our scaling up right now for the general ed population, and I think that's what you were asking, is through the capacity of who we have trained right now in our building. It may be one day that we get to the point of being able to hire more Check and Connect mentors, that their sole focus is that. But at this time, we look at the general ed teachers. We also look at our integration specialists, and there have been conversations as far as potentially having them play a greater role in Check and Connect and implementing it.
Well, I already know Erin Gelano has been trained in it, because all integration specialists were trained in it when they were first hired, when it was first made. But the direction and course has changed. So I thank you for presenting it. I love the program, and I just hope more kids can benefit from it.
Member Loeffler-Kemp.
Yeah, I just wanted to also say it's been really great to see the progress of this. My 5 years on the board, it's kind of followed that, and I was excited when we started talking about it, because I did have the opportunity to go down to some high schools in the Twin Cities when I was getting my master's degree in social work and see it before we started it here. So I was like, this is really a cool program. I appreciate the thoughtful process and the reflection, and that's been a part of it. And I've, as a board member, appreciated the yearly updates that we've gotten on that progress as well. And yeah, let's figure out how to keep training more people and keep it funded. It's working. So thank you all for your team. And Sarah, thank you for your leadership.
Member Kirby?
Well, thanks. Can you just tell me what's the ballpark cost per year now, since we only have one more year on the grant to sustain it?
$160,000.
And then Superintendent Grunson.
Hi. Thank you. I know I've had an opportunity to stop in and see the program in action, and we've been talking about the results that you've been seeing, and that's exciting. I want to thank you for highlighting, because we have done Check and Connect before. I think the difference this time is the work that was done around implementation and a smaller scale. Sometimes when we try to put things in place, and there's pressure to go fast and do it now and do it for everyone. But starting small in manageable pieces and letting it grow and doing the foundational work that is so important to the fidelity of any program. Thank you for highlighting the work that you did on the front end to build that foundation and to build the capacity, and excuse me, and how you monitored that capacity of the school to do that. And I think it's important for us to consider that as we move forward as well, not to move too fast in a direction without making sure that we're able to support that.
I just echo, I echo the rest of our appreciation of the program. I have the opportunity and have always I even have lunch with the mentors usually if I'm subbing in the district, as I did even today. And I really appreciate the graph that you showed with that not only did you put a percentage of what was happening, but you put the numbers by it, so that it was 15 out of 20 or 11 out of 16. And so you could see what 33% numbers look like in the actual. And we're going to encourage when we get board reports from other departments that's something included, because I think that's just more information for board members, and we appreciate that. So, and I love implementation science. We've come a long way in my journey in education to sustainability and data collection and learning from others how to be successful. And so I think Check and Connect is really a good program for our community. So I hope that I always encourage our community to come to the education committee meetings, because that is where we actually spend time. Next week when I review this, I am not going to go into all of this detail. I'm simply going to share. But most of our community comes to our Tuesday night meetings. And I've always, and I'm going to continue within my email and my social networking and my communication with my Western community to watch the YouTube sessions so they can see this, because they often really want us to tell them what's working, and sometimes they don't think anything is working, and we are all working with goals and programming and working with our students and building relationships and being successful with kids that need our extra support. And the fact that you highlight the 6-year graduation is also something that we have to put out into our community a little bit more. Like next week I'm going to, congratulate, I think, 2 more graduates that are graduating now. And depending on where, that increases our last year's graduation rate, if that's where. But we never repost that for our community to know that in actuality, numbers are fluid and they change. So, and always, I hope, in the positive way. So again, appreciate your presentation, and I hope there's a way that we can even, would it be appropriate if I was ever asked by a community member to share with them your PowerPoint? I know it's on our district website, so I could just tell them to go there, but sometimes I'd like to just share it with them. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for coming. our next presentation. Oh, Member Lafleur
Yeah,
Kim.
could you please express a thank you to the two mentors as well? Thank you.
So we're continuing on our agenda with our informational presentations, and so we are now going to go to our presentation from Assistant Superintendent Horton and on student attendance presentations, and you'll introduce yourselves as well. Another great topic to talk about and get information about.
Thank you for your patience.
Let's see. All right, I am trying to get, the other group was much more tech savvy than I am, so I'm trying to cast in Google, and it's not letting me in a full presentation mode. 203C. Yep, I do that, and it kicks me out. So I'm in full presentation mode, and then kicks me out. Any thoughts?
Oh, my computer?
that might work. Are you pulling it off Board Book?
Yeah, there you go. Is that what you want, Jeff?
Yep, oh, that'll work. Who's doing that? All right, well, you've got the stopwatch then, so. All right. I feel pretty lucky today. I've had a chance to have two groups come and share information with you already today, and now we have a third one to talk about attendance. And attendance came up a couple months ago at the school board meeting, and we were asked to put together a presentation to share a little bit more information about what the attendance process looks like. And in doing that, I tried to think about all of the different people that I've met that are working on attendance. And luckily, some of those folks are here tonight to talk about the wonderful things that they're doing to support our school district, both from an employee standpoint, from a community standpoint, to really wrap around our kids. And so they're here today. And so we're just going to go through and introduce ourselves real quick. Jeff Horton, Assistant Superintendent.
Tanya Cherland, Executive Director of the Duluth Community School Collaborative.
I'm Callie DeVrun. I'm MTSS Coordinator at Lincoln Park Middle School for Social, Emotional, and Behavioral Interventions, and then I'm also the Mental Health Partnership Coordinator for the district.
Amy Lucas-Avitz, Assistant St. Louis County Attorney.
Heather Jarvis, Program Manager for the Truancy Action Project, or TAP.
So the group here really just has so much expertise, and I think you're going to hear lots of things that maybe we haven't even thought to ask before about attendance and ways that we're supporting our kids. So I'm really excited just for you to have a chance to hear about this and ask any questions throughout the presentation. So Amy's going to kick us off with talking about what actually is attendance law.
Thank you. We had to figure out who was going to do this slide. They told me I had to do it. So basically, in St. Louis County, we have two statutes that we primarily work under for our truancy and our attendance issues. The first is our educational neglect, and the statute number is right there. This primarily deals with our children that are under 12 years old. So kindergarten to probably about fifth, some sixth graders fall into that. So that would be the educational neglect. Those would go into a child protection if they're screened in for that. So there would be a different kind of role for that. What I primarily deal with is and what our SARB, which stands for Student Attendance Review Board, what we primarily deal with is the second one, which is the statute right here. And this is for students who are 12 years and older. Some of our sixth graders fall into this. And usually we work up to about 10th grade. We don't really work. I haven't seen too many 11th and 12th graders within our review process at this point. But typically, the gist of it is if a student misses or has an unexcused class period, if they have at least 7 within 7 days, within the school year, they can be considered a habitual truant. Many of the kids that come to our SARB have significantly more class periods that are unexcused and missed. But that's basically what comes to us, and we review them. So that's kind of the attendance law in a nutshell.
On the next slide, you'll see our board policies, and so we do have an attendance policy. And I'm also going to pass around just a couple sample letters for you to look at. There's some are 3-day, some are 7-day, but for attendance, it's a little different as was explained for elementary and secondary. So at the elementary level, the first thing we do is if we have 3 unexcused absences, we do send a letter home contacting parents. So we do communicate regularly with parents, but at 3 it triggers a letter, and then we send that home. Another letter gets triggered at the 7-day mark. And then also, and those are for unexcused absences. But sometimes we see parents that are calling and excusing lots of students. And so if we see a lot of excused absences, so if we get to 11 excused, unexcused, any combination of that, then we'd also send home a letter. Because sometimes parents are calling in, but just because they're calling in, we still need to get them in school to learn. There's still, a day missed is a day missed. And so, we want to make sure they're getting all the learning opportunities. So we try to do a lot of things proactively. Our office staff, our principals are really active in trying to get the kids at school and making phone calls home. And these letters are just one way to kind of go about doing that. At the middle school, again, we send home a letter at 3 days unexcused and 7 periods unexcused. One of the differences when you get to middle school and high school is we have class periods. And so 1 period missed at the secondary level counts as an absence. And so that's different. And so that's a change when we get to secondary versus elementary. So you might have missed a class, maybe you skipped second hour one day and you missed fourth hour a couple days later, and you just kind of randomly picked classes. Maybe you only missed 2 classes throughout the day over the course of a semester, but if you missed each one twice, you might be looking at 12 absences. And that's how that would get looked at. And that's what we are held accountable to. So if you did want to link at the policies, they are there. We have some sample letters just passing around for you to see what those look like when they get sent home. There's an elementary and a secondary version for you.
I guess this is me. Sorry. I didn't turn the page quick enough. Basically, the process with our children that are under 12, typically the principals or the assistant principals would call the initial intervention unit, and they would talk about how many absences the children have, any other concerns they may have. That is then screened by our social workers. Sometimes they go out to the schools, sometimes they meet with the families, and then it's determined whether or not it's going to be screened in for a CHIPS or voluntary services, those kinds of things. So that's with our children that are under 12. With our children who are older than 12, typically the assistant principals or our TAP advocates provide myself with a referral. The SARB team then reviews each of those referrals. Those include the attendance letters that Mr. Horton spoke about, as well as the any kind of mediations that have been done, attendance contracts. We also ask about whether the kids are on IEPs, if they've worked with integration specialists, what interventions have the schools tried prior to that. So we have a little more background. A lot of times I have most of the assistant principals on speed dial or text messages, so we talk back and forth so I can get a little more information about the students, and then we present them every Thursday with our committee and decide where we're going to go with each of the students. If we are going to do a petition and bring them to court, if we're going to try a different kind of mediation, if we're going to try some other interventions. A lot of times what we find in this process is some of the kids are already working with a social worker voluntarily, or there might be an open CHIPS case and we can connect the social worker with the schools and just try to open that dialogue and offer more services if we can do that. So that's, in a nutshell, the process.
Thank you. So I'm going to speak to what's currently going well. The Duluth Community School Collaborative is helping to implement the Full Service Community Schools Initiative in Duluth, and we currently have 3 schools, Myers Wilkins Elementary, Lincoln Park, and Denfeld High School. As you know, the collaborative builds intentional partnerships with community organizations, schools, teachers, staff, and individuals with the goal of supporting the whole child. Knowing that poverty has a negative impact on their families, neighborhoods, and the entire community and is multifaceted, we seek to provide services, supports, and access that would not otherwise be available to students and provide it within the schools, which is where they are at most of the time and where families come, and it's a center of the community, so it gives us access to families to provide those supports. Some of the strategies that we employ to do that include after school or out of school time programming, as you know, which address academic, social, emotional, cultural, and life skills training. We also think health is very important, and so we have a community health coordinator at Wilkins, and we do a number of family events that focus on health, because health is a very determinant of attendance, which I'll get to in a minute. We also work a lot with developing family relationships, and I'll talk a little bit about exactly how we're doing that and how we're developing better relationships with the community. So this slide, well, first of all, I wanted to mention that there was a study done by the Finance Project and Children's Aid Society in 2013 that measured social return on investment for community schools. It was a case study, so it was a limited amount of data, but I think it was around a dozen included schools, and they found that $1 invested at the elementary level led to $10.30 in social return on investment, and at the middle school level, $1 invested led to $14.80 return on investment. So it's a very cost-effective way to improve attendance and to improve student outcomes. We don't have data currently that we can look at from Duluth schools about attendance in full-service community schools. Part of that is something that will be developed over time. Part of it is because Wilkins has been around so long that the data just wasn't collected 20-some years ago. But with with Lincoln Park and Denfeld, we can work on that over time. But what we can do is we can look at another case study and we can look at some research on chronic absenteeism and what are some of the ways to prevent that. And so the slide before this actually is about that, the one before that. So in New York City, when they implemented full-service community schools, they found that there was a 7.2% reduction in chronic absenteeism over a course of 2 years. Another way that we can look at this is to look at research on early absenteeism. And the National Center for Children on Poverty did this research where they identified what are the causes of absenteeism and also what are some of the research-based solutions. And so those solutions that are listed up there are things that full-service community schools are doing. For example, engaging families of all backgrounds, offering high-quality education in our out-of-school time programming that responds to diverse learning styles and needs of children, and creating strong partnerships with schools, families, and community agencies, as well as ensuring access to preventative health care. So now if we go to the next slide, I'll talk about each school really briefly. At Wilkins, there was a class that was done last spring and this fall where they grew kale. First of all, they have a big garden there that's just it's an amazing, beautiful garden. Thanks to Britt Johnson, who's the youth program coordinator in the middle there. So they grew kale, and then in the fall, she taught them how to make kale chips. And so they learned that life skill of gardening and cooking. And that helps to improve student engagement. And the next slide is some data that we have that shows how students feel about coming to Compass, which is one of the programs that we offer on Mondays, where students are identified by teachers or our transition advocate, others in the school for needs to be in that program. And 87% of the students with an N of 54 said that I look forward to coming to school on the days that I have Compass. And 91% of the students said that in this program I have met students or adults who care about me. So this is obviously the hypothesis that if students are having really interesting and fun out-of-school time programming, that they're more motivated to come to school, and then if they have relationships, they're more motivated to come to school. Now for Lincoln Park, which is the next slide, they have an after-school program that has 265 students registered, 72 students per day, engaged in 52 different clubs is what they're called, and they range from a wide variety of different topics. They also have a really neat program called Teacher Home Visits, which isn't like a punitive retaliative thing, it's more of a preventative home visit, and that happens with teachers who have been trained how to do those home visits, and 2 teachers at a time go. They also do a lot of parent and community engagement events, and they have a fantastic STEM program with College of St. Scholastica in the summer. And so the next slide shows Lincoln Park's after number of teacher home visits. Over the last 3 years, there was a grant that enabled this, and so keeping it going is going to require additional funding, which is something that I'm working on right now. One of the great benefits of this is that it really builds strong, positive relationships between the families and the teachers, and it helps to build trust. And so that's one of the main things that the collaborative does, is help to build those relationships with families in the schools. And then at Denfeld, we're getting into that solution that was research-based about providing preventative health care. And so at all the schools, we provide dental care. At Denfeld this fall, there was a hygiene clinic that served 11 students, and our coordinator walked up to the classrooms, got the students out, walked them down to the bus, made sure they got to their appointments, and then made sure they got wherever they needed to be after that. And then there were 9 students that were served in a restorative clinic. And there's a Fox 21 news article about that. And then the last slide that I have here is about the Denfeld Dash program, which is Denfeld After School Happenings. And this slide helps to show the importance of transportation home after these wonderful after-school programs. So one of the things that this does is, if you've ever go to Dash, you walk in the room and it's just a really happy place. There's a really great feeling in the room. Students walk in there and they greet Kevin Cheddarquist now, but before Angel Peluso, and they're just really happy to be there. And they also have college volunteers that come in there, or youth serving organizations that are tutoring in there. So that's another draw for them to come there, and they can do their homework. And if they come, they can get a free pass home. And so that's been growing quite a bit. They also get free food right before that, which is another draw. But I'm told that the numbers are increasing, and there's up to about 35 kids regularly attending now. So that's the impact that we're having with full-service community schools on attendance. Thank you.
Hi. So some of the other things that are currently going well are the continuous improvement teams. I know some schools are in different places in terms of continuous improvement, but in a nutshell, it's designed to be a formal process with building leaders to develop systems to support learning. I can speak to Lincoln specifically because I'm a part of that continuous improvement team. And this next slide kind of gives an example of our MTSS vision that was developed through that process. And so we sat with a large group of us last year to really design and move forward our social emotional learning interventions at Lincoln Park, because a lot of the emphasis prior had been on academics. And so we recognize the need to really start looking at this to really improve student outcomes and student achievement. With this vision, we then broke it down in terms of our PBS framework and our tiers to make sure that we were trying to move things to be moving towards Fidelity. The next slides kind of break it down in terms of what that vision looks like as far as the tiers. PBIS is the framework we use at Lincoln. I know that it utilizes the MTSS framework and a variety of other schools, Denfeld, Lakewood, Lowell, Piedmont, and Laura Mack. They've all been through a 2-year implementation process with MDE. All schools are currently using PBIS strategies. And it's really designed to increase positive behaviors through the use of clear and consistent behavior expectations and in the hopes of creating a more positive school climate. We also at Lincoln really valued trauma-informed practices and trauma-informed care, and so we're really trying to embed that into everything we do. And so that's been a goal, is to really look at things through a trauma-informed lens. And a culturally specific lens. And so when we're talking about interventions, we want all of our interventions to be aligning with that. Care Academy was another specific Tier 1 intervention that we rolled out this year with our staff that is being delivered through the Office of Education Equity with William Howes, in which he's coming and training our staff throughout the school year. And then our staff are functioning in PLCs every Wednesday, focusing on Care Academy strategies to close the achievement gap that are being delivered from that training. So that's been a positive addition to Lincoln Park and kind of shifting and moving our vision forward. Restorative practices is another area that we're really looking at and training staff in. Currently we have 5 staff we trained in circles, and we have about a handful of other staff trained in other restorative practices and restorative conferencing and mediations and things like that. We recently applied for a grant in the hopes of being able to train all of our staff at a Tier 1 level to be able to operate and do restorative circles within the classrooms to start relationship building in a different way with kids. Currently, the staff that are trained are supporting teachers and trying to offer as much support as we can within the classroom, doing some restorative circle work to help guide expectations that are being delivered through PBIS and to work out any struggles that may be happening. And then we're also looking at social emotional learning at the Tier 1 level. Prior to this year, we did not have a social emotional learning curriculum for all kids. And so we invested in a second step curriculum. And so all students are currently receiving that every week. So that's been a positive asset that we're currently monitoring. The next slide talks a little bit about Tier 2, and so in terms of social emotional learning, this is happening in a variety of schools. I know at the elementary level they're doing this in some of the buildings. They've hired social emotional learning coordinators or social emotional learning specialists and gen ed social workers to be operating and doing some of this stuff. At Lincoln, we are starting to move in that direction as well with our school counselors to be moving towards having more social emotional learning groups. We also had a Tier 2 group focused on school tardies this year that we piloted at Lincoln to try and support that. And then another kind of cool intervention that we're moving towards starting in the near future is Preventure, which is like a substance abuse support for kids as a prevention support. And Amy, we have actually been partnering with St. Louis County, and Amy's been a key role in helping roll this out. Do you want to speak a little bit more to that, maybe?
The St. Louis County Attorney's Office has provided matching funds. We are working on training right now faculty to implement this for students, but it specifically targets personality styles. So we do interventions that target children's I guess their personality styles so that we can give them the skills that they need. Right now, Virginia High School has come on and they're joining with Lincoln. So the goal would be, we have a grant for 2 years, and the goal with matching funds from St. Louis County Attorney's Office, and then the goal would be that we could roll it out more. There's also funds to train the trainer, so we'll have a trainer that can actually provide training to other people in the community and perhaps in our state so that we can roll this out more. This is a program that is evidence-based. there's only a few places in the United States that's doing this right now. It's primarily Canada, Australia, Africa, and England are doing this right now with some great success. So we're excited to be kind of one of the pilot areas here to roll this out and have two very interesting populations with the Range School as well as here in West Duluth. So it'll be interesting to see where we go with this. I know that we have a training scheduled in January, and we'll kind of go from there. I'm excited to keep you updated as we move forward.
So the next slide represents some data that we collected from our alternative to suspension room that we developed this year. We developed a Tier 3 support for kids that was a restorative and social emotional learning option for students. So rather than being sent home out of school when a suspension occurs because of a major behavior, this would reduce that amount of time, and they'd be in this room to be able to still have that learning happening. It does have a heavy emphasis on social emotional because often the reasons that they're getting suspended have to do with that, and so we wanted to meet the kids' needs. There's still academic instruction occurring within that room, but we do a lot of restorative and circle work, and so that's been pretty promising to see the positive impact that's been having on students. And so the data here shows that the amount of days that students had been out of school for OSS has decreased this year, as you can see from the 18-19 data, in comparison to the previous 4 years. Last year was significantly higher compared to this year. So the first graph bar shows September's data, and then the orange second is October's data. So this year, compared to September and October from the previous 4 years, it's gone down.
I will speak a little bit about the TAP program. We have partnered with the Duluth School District since 1994. Currently, we have advocates at Ordine, Lincoln Park, and Denfeld. And the numbers are... they're a little skewed with fewer students at Ordine, but that's only reflective of the FTE. There's only a 0.5 at Ordine. And they use their TAP advocate a little bit differently than Lincoln and Denfeld, so that's why the numbers are a little bit heavier at Lincoln and Denfeld. But the TAP advocate works with the assistant principals, the counselors, to facilitate and coordinate attendance contract meetings and mediation meetings, and then also work with the students to set up individual goals, whatever improved attendance looks like for them. For some kids who maybe never go to science class, the goal might be, okay, you can go to science class 2 days this week, and then next week let's do 3. Or it might be to reach a certain attendance percentage. And then the advocate offers incentives to the student as an external motivator, and then also connects them to other community resources or school resources that they may need in order to support their attendance. And then if it gets to a point where the school-based interventions, community-based interventions, or the family, it just exceeds the capacity of the school and the family to meet the child's needs, then we'll make the referral to SARB. And I sit on the SARB board with Amy, and we do a little higher level problem solving. And so last year we served 213 students in the 3 schools, and 89% of the students that worked with the TAP advocate had improved in attendance, whatever that meant for the students. And 25 kids that were directly working with the TAP advocate went on to SARB.
So in terms of Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports, in addition, at Lincoln and district-wide, we have school social workers and mental health support that's provided through them. And so this would be skill-building focused and therapeutic focused. Most of our social workers are trained as therapists as well. So it is a high level of support. Special education classrooms also are receiving, or students that have that as part of their IEPs are also receiving social-emotional learning happening within the classroom as well. So they're getting 2 layers of that support. And then collaboration with county social workers, probation. We work very closely to be able to connect students, connect their families, and to try and eliminate barriers as much as possible. And the last piece, it just pertains to mental health partnerships. Mental health partners are currently located in all of our buildings aside from ALC, because it's been a little bit more of a challenging barrier. We have outpatient therapists in all buildings providing individual therapy. We also have day treatment programs in several buildings, including Piedmont, Lorimac, Lincoln, and Myers, and a number of specialty services. And so in terms of therapeutic services that I would say specialty are trauma therapy, group therapy, we have grief groups being offered, and also culturally specific therapy for Native American students. We also have the ability to do family therapy as well within mental health partners. We have a number of agencies that we currently have MOUs with across the district at this time. Sorry, I thought I was done. Okay. And then this next slide just pertains to Lincoln Park's overall unexcused attendance data, and that has declined. So as you can see, it's separated by grade level. In blue was this year's data, and in orange was last year's, and so in all grades it's declined this year. And I believe it's in large part to the social emotional behavioral interventions that we have in place.
Did you have a question, or should I go? The next slide that you'll see in a minute is kind of some of the SARB numbers. Last year we had 126 referrals. Now that's not just Duluth Public Schools, that's all of South St. Louis County schools that we work with. But one of the most exciting things is that we offer a diversion/mediation class for the students that Men as Peacemakers, one of our partners, actually does. In 2015 and 2016, we served 35 students because it was done downtown here at the building for the Men as Peacemakers building. In 2016, 2017, we brought it to just Lincoln, but we brought it to the school for the students, and we had 50 students that went through it then. Now it's in all of our schools, Ordine, Lincoln, Denfeld, and East, and last year we served 96 students. And surprisingly, we've actually had parents that have attended these during the school day as well. That was our big fear, is that we weren't going to have the parents coming, but we've had a few parents that have shown up, which is very exciting. We've also last year we served 116 students, and some of that is as simple as helping the schools get the IEP paperwork signed so that they could start the evaluation, help facilitating insurance so we could get diagnostic assessments, getting a social worker in place. So there are some good things that are happening, and we continue to grow and continue to strategize and try to serve better.
Amy and Heather, before I go on to my slide, I want to throw kind of something back to you, the two of you. We'd had a lot of conversations about this, about the impact of taking students to court. And in your experiences, has that been an impactful or not impactful, or can you just speak a little bit to that and how you've seen that? Because we don't see that lens, and sometimes we're under the perspective that, yep, pull the trigger, send a truancy letter, get them to court, like that'll teach them a lesson. Does that actually work, or can you speak to that?
No. I guess it depends. It depends on the student. Typically, I think some of the things that we've tried to do to make it more impactful is that we have our own truancy calendar now. Prior years, this is the first year we've done it, but prior years we've had it during the actual CHIPS. So kids had to sit out in the hallway and be there for a very long time. Now we have our own calendar on Thursdays at 3:30. So hopefully that will be more helpful. We have the ability to kind of bring students in if they had a bad week, to kind of get a lecture from the judge. But we also have the ability to bring kids in when they do good to get positive reinforcement from the judge. At least that's my goal and my hope, to be able to do that. However, it's not very effective to bring a student into court. I don't want them to get used to being in court, for one thing. But the other thing is that the judge can't make them go to school. The judge can't make them go to class. Many of them do go to school. We just can't get them into the classroom. The judge can't do that. Because we bring them in under the statute we do, I can't send them to AJC. The judge can't send them to AJC. We can't do work crew. We can't do those kinds of things for these students. So when it's the most effective is when we're working together as a team. And Callie says, we've got this parent and we need them to follow through on this or sign the paperwork, those kinds of things. So we've been really cognizant as a SARB team to have a plan when we bring a student in. So if it is, we need to get this kid into intensive day treatment or something like that, we have a focus and a goal. We're not just throwing darts at a dartboard to try to see what sticks. So that's when it's most effective, when we have a plan going in. If we don't have a plan, we're all just kind of spinning our wheels, and it takes a long time. We can get them into an out-of-home placement. We can get them into residential treatment, but it's a process, and it takes a very, very long time to make that happen. So it's not a miracle fix. It's not a quick solution. But when we have a plan, we have better outcomes.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I appreciate that. Just some opportunities for growth. So, we've shared a lot of things around what we're trying to do to wrap around students. When a student is absent, we have to dig deeper. We have to figure out why are they being absent? Why are they not coming to school? And so I think what this team does so great is they look at those things and provide supports through their different programs and partner with each other to come up with those plans and figure out why is this happening and how can we work together to support our students to get them to school. Some things we want to continue to work on, opportunities for growth, because we're not where we need to be yet. We have more things we need to do, and we look forward to that future work. And some of that is continue to expand our MTSS framework, our SCL work, our SCL work as we often call it, trauma-informed practices and restorative practices. Rather than sending a student home for the end of the day or being out for 2 days, what type of restorative practices can we do with kids? Mindsets. Many of us grew up at a different time, and I'm going to use the word generation. Yes, I'm going to use that. And those of us that experienced, you punish. You broke the rule, here it is, and that the punitive discipline is not necessarily the answer. The restorative practices we see much better results out of. Time for staff to meet and train. So we're always looking for how can we find more opportunities for staff to get together, to meet, train, and how can we support them with that given our funding sources. And then we've seen some great information tonight about the collaborative schools, and so really with some of our data we see some of our attendance issues over on our West Side schools a little bit more, and so really creating that pathway to Denfeld, getting community schools on our West Side schools and really supporting our students there. We tend to see a little bit higher there, so that's kind of an early focus based on our data. Equity definitely plays a role in attendance, and that is an important thing that we need to consider. So as we looked at attendance and we say, what role does equity play in there? We have to take a look at the fidelity of the intervention implementation. What is that looking like? Individualizing curriculum for all learners. I think that goes academically, and I think that's also behaviorally too. Culturally sustained pedagogy, looking at how microaggressions are showing up. Our transportation. How does transportation play a role in attendance? These are all really important things that we need to take a look at, and our tool for equity accountability is a great tool to have some of those conversations. Sometimes it's about meeting basic needs, foods, coming to school because they're going to get breakfast and lunch, and having those programs available for some of our learners. Having diverse staff and our students. We see students who sometimes want to go to one school or another school because they walk into school and they don't see themselves there. And so how are we creating that environment? And in the staff, are they seeing staff that look like them? Those are all important things we need to consider in this, as well as our student transfer policy. How does that play a role in this, and applying our T to that, I think, are all important ways that we can look at attendance in the future and have additional conversations to figure out what's going to best meet our students' needs. So in summary, I hope you had a lot of new learnings today. There's a lot of information by an amazing team. Just the things that they're doing are unbelievable, and the partnerships between community and school are just so wonderful. we have hardworking staff. We might not have the numbers where we need them to be yet, but we're working on it. We're seeing some gains. We have people working really hard on this, and I think it's important to see that. When we see a number posted up there, sometimes we don't see the whole picture, and I hope tonight you get a chance to see the dedication and the hard work and commitment there is from our staff and from the community on this. I think we know that equity is important, and we have to continue to talk about equity and how that affects attendance. I think we heard some great things about engagement tonight, about building relationships, working as a team, and we're excited for the work ahead. We're not there yet, but we're excited to take those next steps, to look at some of those opportunities and continue to grow and help our kids out. So I guess in closing, is there anything that any of you would like to share from our presentation that you haven't said already? Any questions? All right, well, thank you for that. Any questions on our presentation?
And that's really, there's a silence because there's no questioning, but we all want to turn our mic on to say thank you. And I understand the complexity of attendance, working as long as I have in the district and teaching a lot of courses to seniors at times that are strugglers when they are working on other things. So, just really a good job. And we are hopeful with what we know works, because it's not punitive and it's not suspensions. And as much as sometimes, restorative mental health is really our way to go. We really don't want to see much of you. So thank you. And attendance is a part of our North Star state guidelines. It's in an account, so it will come up again. So we're being proactive in sharing with our community and with our board the things that we really have been doing in the district. And these are things we've been doing, for a long time, not as systematically complete maybe, but certainly TAP has been with us since '94, and our programs have been successful for that. So we thank you. Thank you. So we're going to continue. We've just got a few things left on our agenda, and it's really the more routine. Every month we look at these things and approve them. Assistant Superintendent Horton, we've got the community calendar. Does he have to present that to us, or that's in our packet? We've looked at it. It's a school calendar. What did I say?
Community calendar.
Community calendar. Well, do you have to speak to this calendar, or can we just know that we're going to look at it and approve it on Tuesday night?
I have questions about it too.
Or any questions? Member Oswald?
Are you going to present it, or should I just ask?
I will just share a little bit, and then maybe you can add. The calendar is largely a copy forward from the previous year. We had a lot of discussion about the calendar and what those days would look like. We moved everything forward. The main conversation was around the staff development day and the location of that. We brought that. We had a committee work on that, made up of principal representation. We had district leadership there. We had our teachers union present, and we had our paraprofessionals present for that conversation. After a couple meetings, we brought that forward to the QSC team, and we debated it there, discussed different options, and this was the calendar that was recommended. The biggest conversation was around the staff development day and the location of it in October. The team felt that it was best located where it was this year, which is on that last Monday in October. And then the way the calendar fell is the teachers do have to come back to school on the Monday following the students being done on Friday. We did try to think of creative ways to try to get that into Friday, but there really was not an option that we could come up with that would work. So that is kind of where that fell. The rest of the schedule is pretty much where it was for this year. So it was a leap year this year, so if you're looking for anything special in there, there is February 29th.
Oh, that's right.
So, 2 questions. Does that mean that students have to go to school through the Friday in June?
Yes.
Okay. That's so not going to happen. There'd be more students absent that day than I ever know about. I don't know, has that ever happened in the history of our district that they've had to go through Fridays?
Yes.
Not in my recent memory. But my other question, I guess maybe more of a statement, is nearly every single meeting I participate in with community and with staff is the begging and the pleading for more staff development time. And to present to this calendar where we say, before school starts and one day, that doesn't show our community that we're invested in learning and our teachers want to learn. And then there's the debate about what is worthwhile staff development and how do you meet the needs of what teachers need to learn. And I'm sure those conversations must have happened at those meetings, but yet this is what we put forward to the community, and they go, yay, teachers get one day in the school year to meet the needs of their students. I think that's really disappointing, and I would like to know how we can advocate for either more funding, more time, more space.
Yeah, well. Oh, I'm sorry. Superintendent Kranzak.
Thank you. I did want to point out one other thing. We generally in December would have had the 23rd off, but the likelihood of coming to school for the Monday, the way it falls, it's either the Friday in the end of June or that Monday, and so there was a lot of discussion about that. Staff development time, both the student school year, how many days kids are in school, and how many days teachers are at work, and how many staff development days they have, and how many days they have with students, is all defined in contract. Right now, we have 1,020.7 what? 0.7 hours in school. So, it was 1,020.7 hours in the school. And the state requirement is 1,020 hours in school. The only way to get more staff development right now would be to decrease student time, because we don't have more days in the calendar. Those would have to be negotiated if we were going to add days to the teacher work year. And because we weren't willing to go below the 1,020 hours, and we can't add days to the calendar, we're kind of locked in right now with how much staff development we have, unless we're willing to go below the state guidelines for instructional time for our middle and high schools. So that's where we are. There was discussion about going below the 1020 and adding a couple of early release days. We've had some early release. We've tried late arrival. We felt that we needed more family input on those. We know that when students have early release days, it can be challenging. And when we used our equity tool to look at the calendar and the decisions that were being made, said that it would probably affect students or families who have a hard time getting childcare or who don't have transportation. And we weren't ready to move forward with that yet at this time without more work with parents and community members. And so that's where we are on that.
Yeah, I just want to make just a general comment as your liaison to the Quality Steering Committee, that there was a lot of discussion last week on the calendars. This was being presented, and it wasn't the first time it was presented to some of the people at the table there as well. And so, I stress that there's been a lot of input and a lot of conversation around this calendar before it's coming to us from our staff.
So, just a question. I know that is there opportunity in buildings for staff that are interested in professional development that pertains to their curriculum or to their advancement, that they could apply for a sub and an ability to go to a specific staff development opportunity for them?
I wish it was more, but there are funds available at each building that people can work with their continuous improvement teams and decide what is the best training. But there are opportunities available at all buildings.
I have to double check if the middle school one, I know elementary is less, it's 9:35, 9:45, and then high school is the 10:20. I can check that real quick.
But what I mean is already out.
I'd have to recheck those numbers too.
What is this on the agenda? Is this on the agenda?
We're talking about the calendar?
Yeah, calendar. I'm talking, are you guys talking calendar?
We are.
Oh, the calendar. Yes. So, are you guys just talking about calendar and having the early release and that?
No, just the calendar.
Just the calendar.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Regarding staff development and early release, that the elementary and the middle school may be able to have early release, given what we have right now, and then monetarily for the future, doesn't have to be for next year, we look at what it would then cost to do that.
Thank
That's
you.
what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Representative Assistant Horton.
Yep,
Thank
just
you.
follow up. Middle school, it does have the 10-20 hours, so it is just the elementary piece.
Okay, thank you. We have some, just again, the regular action items that we have most months. We have some grant acceptances to verify, 4 of them. We have field trip requests to Wolf Ridge. And we have some graduation shout outs to do. And there is there's some grants to accept. And then we are done. So there's some future items of policy update. So thank you very much for coming tonight, and this meeting is adjourned.